Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at a pretty interesting DMU by Hornby. I really like single car DMUs because they're an easy way to create an entire train. In fact, I don't think there's many other ways that you can create an entire train with just a single model, but with these you can. So today I'm looking at a model that I've never looked at before. It's been out for about 17 years, I reckon, since 2008, so I thought it's probably about time I looked at one. So today we are looking at this. This is Hornby's Class 153 in the ScotRail livery, which as you can see is extremely complex. Looks like we've got some pretty cool printing on this model, which I'm looking forward to seeing in the flesh. So this is not a railroad model. Yeah, for some reason I always assumed that this was in the railroad or railroad plus range. I certainly paid a railroad price for it, but the full price, Hornby's RRP for this, is £152.49 apparently, which is obviously a lot more expensive than most railroad models, although Rails had this for sale for £89.50 and they reduced it even further than that to £85.03, which is what I paid. So a really reasonable price for what is not a railroad locomotive. That's got me quite curious. Now, in the past, I have reviewed Hornby Railways locomotives that I thought should have belonged in the railroad range. So this might be one of them, but it might be a super detailed model. You know, 2008, Hornby were producing some amazing models by then and even before then. So possibly this is going to be one of them. Possibly it's going to be railroad grade. But anyway, an interesting single car DMU. What is this like? And if you'd like to try one for yourself, I will pop an affiliate link down in the description. Okay, let's take a look. So quite a few people have been asking me to make more modern image reviews, and plenty of these 153s are still in service today, so I guess this qualifies as something a bit more modern. Anyway, looking forward to seeing what this is like. Let me show you the end of the box. So there's a few different versions of this model by Hornby, but the one I've got is R30146. It's the ScotRail Class 153, and it's number 153305. And it's DCC ready, and we'll talk more about the mechanism and the innards later on, of course. Anyway, back of the box, you can see this was route availability 1, so quite versatile. We've got a bit of brief history in the middle there. Feel free to pause and read that if you want to. And then on the end, we've got the drawings by Hornby, which are dated 2008. So yeah, 17 years ago. That means if this model was a human, it would be almost an adult by now. That is terrifying. So like I say, about time I reviewed one of these. The box feels decently heavy actually, so I hold some hope that this isn't going to be just a typical plastic cheap model with a Hornby Railroad motor bogie on it. It might be that, just with a nice weight in the middle. Hopefully not though. Hopefully this is going to be more of a Hornby Railways quality, but here we go. Oh, no big reveal. It's a large model though. But as you can see, it's all wrapped up. So let's pop this out. It does still feel pretty heavy. I'm stripping the layers away. Yeah, it's got some weight to it. For a single car unit, that's quite surprising, really. Anyway, these instructions might reveal a bit more. So, Class 153, and it's only for the 153, so it's nothing to do with the Super Sprinter that I've reviewed before then. Right, lubrication. It doesn't reveal a whole lot, does it, really? So, you can lubricate the axles if you want. Body removal, ease the lower edge of the body away from the chassis, right, so it's clipped on. I'll use my glue spreaders for that. And then DCC ready, we've got an 8-pin socket apparently on there, and yeah, that does look like a fairly standard Hornby motor bogie. But, you know, they work okay, so at least we can expect decent performance. And then, yeah, nothing much on the back. All right, so it looks like it's going to be your sort of box standard railroad mechanism. Not the greatest quality in the world if that's the case, but then again, they do run okay, so hopefully we can look forward to some decent performance. Right, we do have some accessories, so I'll flip this upside down to start with, and we'll have a look and see what those are. And yeah, there's not a whole lot. So you've got NEM couplings, which you can fit to the model, and then I'm guessing those are BSI couplings, but they're not NEM, they have got a clip on them. So where exactly those go, we will see later on. But that's all we've got in the accessories pack. Packaging wise, there's lots of this foam cushioning the model, which is good. Hopefully that means there's some detail here to protect. And with that, let's see if we can get eyes on this thing. Interested to see the quality of the UV printing on this, because it's a bit of a lucky dip with Hornby, really. I've seen some pretty bad ones, like the Beatles ones and the Class 66, but I've seen some good ones as well. So where's this going to be? Let's just lift it up. I can't get it unwrapped. Oh, is it taped up? What the heck? Why would you do that? It is taped up. Okay then. All right. And here it is. And yeah, the UV printing is the bad kind. It looks pretty poor actually, quite pixelated, no real definition in the print work, which is a shame because the new UV printers are so much better. Of course, this is going to look okay from a distance, but up close I can guarantee this is going to look grainier than the sandiest beach in the world, and that's quite grainy. Anyway, underneath, yeah, it looks like your standard setup, so just a single driven bogie, no traction tyres though, which is good. Like I've been saying, the model's quite heavy, so it doesn't need those. And then, yeah, we've just got a non-driven bogie on the other end, which appears to have pickups on it, so all-wheel pickup then, hopefully. All right, well, an interesting mixed bag so far. Let's have a bit of background on these in real life, and then we'll take a much closer look at the level of detail and, of course, the features. The British Rail Class 153 or Super Sprinter was a class of 70 single rail cars which were converted over from the existing Class 155 DMU two-car units built in the late 1980s by the Leyland Bus Company, the same outfit responsible for the Pacers, of course. This rebuilding took place surprisingly soon in the early 1990s, and as far as I can tell, there wasn't a major issue with the Class 155, except for the automatic doors not working properly initially, but I guess it was just deemed that they would be more efficient as single-car units. Now, a key challenge in their conversion included retrofitting new driver's cabs into spaces previously used for luggage storage on the B end of each unit, which previously didn't need a cab due to them being part of a two-car set. They were also fitted with new BSI automatic couplers, allowing them to be coupled up to other modern DMUs. Today, several Class 153s remain in service across the UK, and they're operated by companies such as Transport for Rails, ScotRail, as we see here, and also Network Rail. Well, there it is, up close and personal for you, Hornby ScotRail Class 153. And I am so glad I didn't pay anything close to the full price for this, because it's atrocious. It is unbelievably bad. The printing is terrible in ways that will literally blow your mind. For example, the printing on the box, the loco's packaging, is actually better than the printing on the loco. How do you even manage that? If I was Hornby, I'd be embarrassed as anything to have this in my range. I can't even speak about the model that much because, frankly, I can't see it. Both sides of the model are completely UV printed, and every little detail, everything that should be picked out is just done with the UV printing, and as you can probably tell already, it looks terrible. So just to explain the terminology here, when a model is decorated properly, it is done with a tampo printing machine. That means each colour is printed onto the model individually by a machine mechanically with real paint, and that produces something like this, which looks excellent. With a UV printer, you just position the model in front of a machine and it just prints all of the decoration onto the surface, all of the colours at the same time in one fell swoop. It's an extremely quick and it's an extremely cheap process. And like any job done extremely cheaply and quickly, this job has been done very badly. So the printing is kind of grainy and pixelated, the colours look washed out. My favourite part is these danger signs which are printed onto here. Absolutely shocking. And here's a look at the Hornby Super Sprinter, which was not UV printed, this was tampo printed. Hopefully you can see the difference here. The doors are monumentally bad. are they even lined up correctly? I'm not sure, but yeah, the printing on these doors and the colour of the grey of the door is also clearly just printed onto there, and it's pixelated and grainy looking. Oh my word. Look at the other door. There's supposed to be some text above there, but it's been completely lost. Like, what? This is a Hornby Railways model? Seriously? I mean, back from a distance, it might look reasonably impressive, but if it's close enough to you so that you've got it in your hands, for example, it just looks so, so bad. Why did they sign off on this when they received the first samples? Right, so let me show you the box now. Now you are looking at the box. Here's the people on the bicycles. Look at this, so much sharper, much less pixelated, better colours, better fidelity. And here's the logo again. How, Hornby? How did you make this look so bad? Look, here's the danger signs again. This is on the box. Looks a lot better. This model would literally have been better if they'd put stickers on the side of it. And there's the model itself. Absolutely amazing. It is genuinely impressive how bad the decoration is. And like I say, it's the entire model from this end to this end, right the way across, UV printed and ruined entirely. The ends are a little bit better because the details here are printed on. So look at this, look how much better these are with their tampo printing. Yeah, this looks sharp, this looks bad. Why did they think that was okay? Right, let's talk about other things then, and yeah, it's a basic model. It's not quite a railroad model because there's a fair few details, but a lot of the model is very, very simple. I mean, the bogies are basic, very few separately fitted parts down here. The underframe consists mainly of moulded detail. There's a few separate parts which look okay, but yeah, most of this is moulded. As you can see, nothing here is picked out. This is silly as well. Look at this. So we've got an M coupling pre-fitted, so why we've got 3 couplings I don't know, because there was a couple more of them in the box, so we've got 3 couplings. I don't know why they'd do that, weird. And then the snowplow is just kind of affixed to the NEM coupling area, which makes it look like it's floating in the air. Is that how the real models looked? The plow would be on a beam sticking out of the bogie like that? I mean, I'm no expert, but I don't think they'd do it like that, would they? Would they? Don't think so. The ends look a little bit better though. We've got the BSI coupling on this end, so again we've got 3 of those, so yeah, it shows you how much thought has been put into this project. But then there's a few separate parts here. The corridor connector, it looks okay. We've got a few fine parts separately fitted around there. We've got wipers pre-fitted to the windows, and these are physical separate wipers, not just part of the moulding, so that looks okay. Hopefully this model, as a Hornby Railways model and not a railroad model, will have working lighting. It looks as though these lights will work. Considering this was over £150 at the full price, it really should have working lighting, and I'm hoping it will do. Internally though, things are quite disappointing. We've got very little in the way of cab detail. We've got seats for the drivers. We've got a tiny bit of moulding on the instrument panel, but that's it. Nothing really painted inside here. It's very basic, and I'll be surprised if we get any lighting in here as well. The passenger compartment is a little better actually, because there's a couple of different colours used. The tables have been picked out in a white, and so have the edges of the seats. So these actually look reasonably detailed. Yes, the inside of the model is better painted than the outside, so yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but none of this makes any sense, so just go with it. The roof is basic again. I mean, we've got decent moulding. This is really the only place on the model where you can see the moulding, because it's just been ruined on the rest of it by the UV printing. But yeah, it looks reasonably sharp. You can tell that this isn't a sort of 50-year-old model or something. And we've got a few separate parts, these little units on the ends. These are separate parts, and I guess that's it. No real complexity anywhere on the model, to be honest. So yeah, I think that is literally all there is to see on this model. I mean, I only paid £85 for this, but even so, would you really want to spend £85 for something that looks this bad? I don't know. You know, perhaps if you're sort of half blind and you won't ever notice how bad the printing looks up close, maybe that would be okay. Looking at something like this and seeing how much better it is, you can never put this model next to the RAF Super Sprinter, because they just, yeah, it just shows how ridiculous this thing looks. So yeah, I've actually lost for words. There's nothing else to say. There's nothing going for this. It's so basic. Oh, the weight, there we go. Found something good to say here. The weight is pretty good. It weighs in at 350 grams. Comparing that with another single car DMU, such as the Bachmann 121, for example, well, that thing weighed just 187 grams. So this is, you know, it's a bit larger than the 121, but it's almost double the weight. So weight-wise, it's pretty good. So excellent, good heavy model. Otherwise, yeah, it looks absolutely terrible. Right, one last look at this poor sod of a cow. Oh dear, immortalised forever, or for 5 years until it ends up in a landfill on the side of a truly terrible looking DMU. What a shame. I've seen so much better UV printing than this. Yeah, time to get a new machine, I think, Hornby. Right, well, performance time. Aren't we looking forward to that? I know I am. Alright then, there she is down onto the track, and the sad thing is about this, you know, if you stand back and squint, it could actually have been a decent model if not for the terrible decoration. I'm sure a simpler livery on this model would have been absolutely fine, and you know, if they just used a higher quality UV printing method, perhaps if they had tried to print this on by other means, it would have looked better. The model itself as a budget model isn't too bad. It really is the decoration that's let this down. Anyway, I have already done the initial performance testing and running in, so I'll show you all of that in just a second. After that, I took this apart to look at the mechanism, and that's what we're going to go into now. So this loco just has one driven bogie. As you can see, the rear bogie here is undriven, which usually I would say is a bit naff, but obviously this is a single car unit. It doesn't need to have masses of traction. Plus, it doesn't have rubber tyres fitted to its driving wheels, which I also like. That's a maintenance nightmare that you haven't got to have with this loco. We've also got pickups going to all of the wheels, including the undriven wheels. So it's all-wheel pickup, again, not hindered by rubber traction tyres. That's great. The base keeper plate is clipped on, unfortunately, no screws, and that is a real theme with this locomotive. I was expecting a real battle to get the base keeper off this loco, but I didn't have one. It was actually quite easy to do. It popped off without too much struggling. As you can see though, plastic chassis here and no separate bearings on the driving axles. Acceptable just about on a railroad locomotive. On a more expensive Hornby Railways loco though, at least at the normal prices, I think that's a bit more questionable really. Also, removing the body is really annoying. It is just clipped on, again, no screws, but it's really hard to get your fingernails underneath the body because it fits to the chassis so seamlessly. So I ended up kind of scratching at this a little bit with a screwdriver, which I didn't really mind doing too much with this loco because I don't care if I ruin the paint job, it's already ruined. But yeah, not ideal really. Eventually though, I was able to get my glue spreaders under the body, and then it was quite easy to remove. Now, there are contacts here, as you can see, so we have got lighting, but also no wires connecting the body to the chassis, which is great. That's for one end. The other end actually has the lights built into the chassis itself, so it works a little bit differently on this end. The chassis itself is just plastic and it's ballasted with metal weights, so not great quality, but like I say, the weight itself is very good. And then we've got Hornby's standard sealed motor bogie here. Again, not great for serviceability, very cheap, very basic. Hornby do say that this runs a 5-pole motor though, so that's certainly better than a 3-pole. Then on the top we've got this circuit board with the 8-pin DCC socket on board, so that's what you need if you want to chip this loco. And then finally there's no interior lighting of any kind, which is a shame. You know, you'd expect that really from a Hornby Railways loco, particularly a passenger carrying vehicle with 2 cabs and such. Yeah, a bit of interior lighting I think would have been good. Then the gauging was fine though, 14.2mm to 14.3 back to back, which is just comfortably below the standard. Nothing wrong with that. So it's a basic mechanism, it's got no frills, which like I say is fine on cheaper budget models. But it is possible to pay sort of over £150 for this, and I think at that sort of price this is a bit less acceptable. So quite a cheap, poor quality mechanism in areas which is not that serviceable. But anyway, how was the actual performance? Let me jump back in time and show you. Okay, well, let's see if it at least works nicely then. So, first bit of power, forwards direction. With bated breath, here we go, turning up. Alright, yes, it's moving. And yeah, reasonably smoothly. Yep, that's not too bad. And I can see, thank goodness, we do have some working lights here. So we've got cool white LEDs in the forwards direction, and then plain red tail lights. So yeah, that's fine. I think that looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any interior lighting. Now that might be because it doesn't have it, or it might be just because it's too dim. So I guess the mechanism section will be the answer to that, and you'll know already. But yeah, even if it does have some, I'm not seeing any. Again, that's a shame, isn't it, for what this kind of cost at the full price. Anyway, let's have a look at the gearing then. So at 50% speed, well, they call it a sprinter, so it certainly does kind of sprint. That's half power. Let's see what full speed's like then. I imagine this is going to be quite quick. Oh, wow. Is it a super sprinter or is it a bullet train? Crikey, that is quick. Alright, so what about your more precise station manoeuvres then? Can this crawl, in other words? Let's see. Turning up very, very slowly. This has not been running at this point, by the way, so I will run this in before repeating these tests and judging the loco, but it's buzzing, and I'm still slowly turning it up. It's buzzing louder. Oh, wow, that's really quite poor, isn't it? I'm sure I've had railroad diesels perform better than that. Slower. Wow, seriously. So that, oh, it's a bit better in forwards. Can't even maintain that speed. And that's not even a crawl. You know, I can imagine a loco moving that speed in a station. So, yeah, that's bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, it might get better as it runs in, and hopefully it will. But at the moment, it's only decent at the higher speeds. Dearie me. Right. Let's have a look at the torque then. Hopefully this will be alright. I think it will be. Here we go. Yeah, doesn't seem to care. Put my finger in front of it. Doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. So yeah, that's fine. Plenty of power in the mechanism. So with that then, I guess we just need to see how this gets on around the track and hope, with fingers crossed, that it improves a little bit and becomes smoother at the slower speeds, because it really needs a good mark on performance if it's going to get an acceptable score. So here we go, 50%. Goodness, it's quite quick, and it's also obviously very large, but no issues at all around those second radius curves. So yeah, performance-wise, it looks as though it has the potential to be a decent runner. Everything seems to be adjusted right, it seems to stay on the track, it's got enough pickups to be reliable. It's just, is that motor bogie capable of outputting a really good performance for this loco? Well, at the moment, no, but obviously it's stone cold out of the box. It needs to warm up, it needs to run in. Hopefully things will be better once that has been done. So I'll let it run now for 30 in either direction, and then we shall come back and we'll see if there's any change. So don't go anywhere, I'll be back shortly and I'll finish off the review. Alright folks, we are back. I would say then that this loco is a bit over geared. I mean, watch this. Or under geared, is it over or under? It's a bit too fast anyway, look. It's a blur. And the top speed, I think, of this class in real life was 75 miles an hour. So there's no reason why it should have to do this. And as we saw, the crawl wasn't very good. So perhaps if it had been geared to run a bit more slowly, then, you know, the crawl would have been better. And we'll see in a moment whether or not the crawl is better now that this has run in. I suppose there is one advantage to this being lightning fast though, and that is if you're exhibiting this at an exhibition or something similar, you could very, very quickly whip this past your viewers, blah, 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 and hopefully none of them would notice what a shambolic paint job this loco's got. So maybe that's what Hornby was thinking by making this farcically too fast. But what's the crawl like? Possibly this has improved now that it's fully warmed up and run in. So turning up, buzzing, like before, a bit more. Oh, yeah, something tells me this is not going to be brilliant. So it's a 5-pole motor. Oh, there we go. Cool, that's not very slow and it's not very smooth. In fact, I can hear it juddering. Oh dear. So either it's not a brilliant 5-pole motor, or more likely the gearing just means that there isn't enough torque at this speed for smoothness. Or the weight. A bit more. Yeah, imagine this coming into a station like that. It's not very realistic, unfortunately. Oh, suddenly it went. That's weird. I didn't touch the controller then and it just kind of took off. So it's a lovely runner at the high speeds. I had zero issues with it. It didn't cut out or anything like that. You know, once it's going, that's fine. Smooth starts and stops, fine manoeuvres through stations to park the train correctly and precisely. Yeah, forget about it. At least if this one's anything to go by. So yeah, fairly disappointing on performance. You know, it's not bad. I would say it's okay for a railroad model, but of course, this is not a railroad model. This is more expensive than that, and it's in Hornby's main range. So yeah, unfortunately, I was expecting better. Torque test was fine before. Yeah, it's spinning its wheels fine. So yeah, it's not a terrible performer, not terrible, but the slow speed performance leaves a lot to be desired, I think. Right, well, I won't couple this up to anything, but I will talk about the tractive effort because it's insane. So because of the weight, 350 grams, that came in at 0.44 newtons of tractive effort. That should be about 27 coaches on straight and level track. Now, what's this going to be hauling? Itself? If you wanted to, you could probably couple this to another DMU, but then that'd be powered as well. So weight-wise, power-wise, obviously you're never going to have any issues with this. Very, very glad they didn't fit traction tyres to it. Anyway, let's get on with this. Let me send this off around the layout and we'll have a bit of a running session. Right, so on the middle line I have a Super Sprinter. This is the Hornby Class 156, which is a poorer model generally. It's not got the lighting, it's got less detail. But having said that, it does look so much better because it's not UV printed. So this is the poorer model, but I have to say I prefer it just because it at least doesn't look diabolical. So there goes that, the Hornby 156, an older design I think. I think this was tooled up quite some time ago. And then sticking with the theme of single car DMU units, I've got the Bachmann Class 121, which is obviously far superior to the Hornby 156 and the 153. Anyway, let's see if we can wrap this up. Alright, well, all things considered then, I don't think this is a locomotive I could recommend to you. At least not at the normal prices, so 150 quid or 10 to 15% down from 150 quid at the retailers. Personally, I would not go there. It's not worth that in my opinion. If you must buy one of these, and I don't recommend that you do, get it at half price, get it at a heavily discounted rate from the retailers so that you're not investing a lot of money in something that is quite poor. Now there's a couple of caveats with that. First of all, other versions of this model in other liveries may not be this bad. They may not all be UV printed. Some of them may be printed properly, and in those cases, perhaps this would be something I could recommend. So what I'd say is if you're interested in a different version of this model in a different livery, maybe ask your local retailer if you can look at one first, and if the paint job is satisfying to you, then things are a little different. Then maybe it's something you should invest in if you want one. Also, bear in mind, this is only the way mine is performing. It's possible that other models may be better runners than mine, so keep that in mind. I doubt that there's going to be a lot of difference. As we saw, it's not a brilliant mechanism, so I can't imagine there being lots of these that are absolutely incredible performers, but it is possible, so I will say that. Otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't go there, folks. I just wouldn't. It doesn't run that great. The detail's very, very basic, and the way the model looks because of that paint job, it makes me just say this is best avoided. It's got some good points. I do like the lighting, for example. Some of the detail, I mean the passenger compartment, that looks fine. Otherwise though, yeah, steer clear of this one, folks. Not one that I think I could recommend. With that then, let's do some ratings for this, and the level of detail I've given just 2-star. Yeah, it's not particularly well done, is it? We've got no proper cab detail, there's some moulded controls and dials and such, but that's it really, nothing painted. Obviously, we've got the very poor decoration, which is one of the worst I think I've seen. Unbelievable, and it's missing things like interior lighting, more separate parts, fine details, etc. Yeah, it's not particularly detailed. The ends do look better though, so yeah, we've got separate wipers there, smaller parts. The ends look pretty good. We've got working lighting, which is good, and as I've been saying, the passenger compartments look okay. Some attention has been given to those. Performance, I've given a middle of the road 3-star. I mean, at the higher speeds, it's nice and smooth. It's got lots of pickups, so it doesn't cut out. The gauging's good, it handles curves nicely, so that's all good. It's just the gearing doesn't make a lot of sense. This thing has been geared so that it can fly along, even though the maximum real life top speed was about 75 miles an hour. This thing scale, it must be doing over 100 very, very easily. Also, the low speed, because of that gearing, I think, is really not very good. So if you're starting and stopping smoothly, it's juddering, it's jerking, it's noisy. Not brilliant. Certainly not for 152 pounds RRP. The pulling power though, thanks to the loco's weight, is excellent. 27 coaches on straight and level track. To say this has only got one driven bogie and no traction tyres, that's very, very impressive, and of course more than you could ever possibly need for a locomotive like this. Mechanism though, again, is middle of the road. I've given it 3-star. It's got some good things. It's got the lack of traction tyres, which I think is great. It's got all-wheel pickups, that's good as well. But on the downside, it's got no proper bearings separately fitted to the axle. That's not great. I don't think this has got a flywheel on the motor, and it's also not that serviceable. The whole thing is fitted together with clips, not screws, and the body is particularly annoying to remove because it makes it very difficult for you to get your sort of fingernails behind the body. So yeah, middle of the road on mechanism. It's not terrible, but I think I would have expected better. The quality then is below middle of the road for me. I've given it 2-star. Now I've knocked off 2 stars purely for the decoration itself. It's just a lazy job, this. All of the detail on the sides of the model has been left to the UV printer to pick out, and as such it's pixelated, it's imprecise, it's very, very poor, even if you're not scrutinizing it up close. Even if you're just holding it in your hands, it's obvious how bad this is. So very poor. Otherwise, yeah, just plastic construction. All clipped together, not very nicely put together, no die-cast components really. Obviously there's going to be a weight and the wheels are metal, but other than that, yeah, it's very, very plasticky. So 2-star, not the best quality. Value for money then, so I have to say £152.49, that's the RRP for these, is a rip-off. It's not worth that, not in a million years. It seems as though customers have figured that out though, because the retailers recently have been selling these off for as little as £85, which I still don't think is quite worth it, because obviously this loco looks so bad, but obviously that's close to half price. It's much better than the RRP. So I'd give that price sort of 3-4 stars. The RRP is obviously much lower. I've split the difference, I've given it 3-star. Overall then, that is 5.57 out of 10, or a grade of F. That means I've failed this model. Unfortunately, yeah, I can't pass a model that looks like this, can I? Not in this day and age, and for up to £152. It's got some good aspects, as we've discussed, but for the most part, like I've been saying, I do think this loco is best avoided. Into the logbook this goes then, and it is 17th place, quite near the bottom then, above the Bachmann USRA 060 and below Hornby's Class 110. Alright then folks, well that will just about do it for this review. Obviously you win some and you lose some. I think this one was a loss, unfortunately. I'm just glad I didn't decide to pre-order one of these when they were announced, and that I didn't pay sort of, what would 15% from 150 be? It would have been, I don't know, 20 quid off. It would have been 130 quid quite easily. I'm very glad I didn't do that. Something just told me not to. Something said, wait, this isn't going to sell, you'll get this cheaper. And indeed I did. So if you must have one of these, that's what I'd recommend. Otherwise though, just pick up something else. It's not worth the faff, it's not worth the damage to your eyes when you've got to look at the thing running. Yeah, not one I'd recommend. But anyway, let me know what you think. Have I been too harsh? Have I got this spot on? Please do comment down below and feedback. That's always very useful and much appreciated. For now though, we'll leave it there. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you for another video very, very soon. Alright, cheers folks. You take care.